Monster Legends Guides, where we talk about monsters' moves, rune sets, partners, all that jazz. Today we're looking a look at TuelKahju, who was the second to last legendary monster you may obtain in the Battle Mage event. Now, apparently this guy is getting bad reviews, and I don't know why. I know it's not like I know it has something to do with it not being Shalinar Senpai, but yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just because it's not this thing, it's automatically shit. What? But no, this guy's actually really, really great because he just upright counters Dartmouth. He just straight up takes away his toys. He can also take away just debuffers toys too. Basically, this guy can take away anything on the field, any negative effects and any of the positive effects the enemies might have. He basically does that. They're all single based, like those two moves in general are single based, but they are on an AOE scaling of taking away everything and or removing everything. So essentially, personally, I didn't think any of this monster would get any bad reviews because it's like I know a lot of people didn't like Ukaduma, but I didn't think anybody would talk crap about the other two monsters. I think in all honesty, I think all three of monsters were fantastic. Personally, I really loved the maze overall. I really liked the design of these monsters. Really liked the stats, the concept. And people didn't like this thing, and I don't know why. Because it's basically what you would want in a support. Damage. It does damage. It's not just there to support. It also does productive stuff while it's there. This thing also combos well with other monsters that use fire-based attacks. So even things outside of fire category like Roxanne and Pixelian, I don't know why people don't like this thing. Alright, but like it's like underrated or something like that. Basically, what TuelKahju is, he's basically was one of those monsters that can do damage without even having to build damage, because that's what elemental weakeners do. I consider elemental weakeners, some of, like pretty much most of all of them, the best attackers in the game at the moment, because they don't need to set up. All they need to do, like in terms of setting up double damage, they don't need somebody else to just like prep up for them. You could pretty much run two deniers and a setter, and they're done. The enemy is done. They can't do anything. Because once they've set up I know this guy, like I said, I just said they didn't need to set up, but like they set up on their own. They can apply the weakness. Now every single monster on the enemy team is now weak to elemental damage, and you can just proceed to blow them up from there. Based on just like most of the monsters that can apply a weakness have really high base damage, or just like they have things that allow them to do a lot of damage to the enemy if they take the weak time to weaken them. Shalinar, for example, has a single target, I think it was like 60 or 65 damage fire-based move. She has double damage to complement with that to for sure kill something. She will for sure knock something else, regardless of how tanky it is. If you have the right runes on it, odds are it's dead. This is also a good Igursis counter. He does counter Igursis. That's also another thing to pick up on him. But again, elemental weakness just do a certain amount of damage. And speaking of damage, check out this guy's power stat. This guy has a power of 3,509. Really, really impressive base power. In terms of fire monsters, it probably carries along the lines of Dartmouth. I think that's the same power. I think he does have the same power as him. But if not, he's up there with the other fire monsters. He's on his own level with them. His life is 28,651. This is probably the least impressive stat of the three stats. It's also the lowest stat of the three stats. But you know, it's not. You could say it's an alright life. It's not 29k. It's not 30k. But you know, it's at least it's not like 25k. Life's in terms of lifespan. That's in middle. That's all right. Speed is 3,465. Now, this guy actually runs denier speed. He's faster than most water deniers, too, especially some of the metal ones like Frostbite, Gavin, I do believe, and Kalik, possibly. I think that's a thing. But he's just naturally fast. So if you wanted to run him full speed, you can, because he actually has an immunity to freeze, an AoE scaling of it too. You know, this guy an AoE immunity to freeze, which is really nice. Again, you could say he's kind of along the lines of Vadianoi. Every time he does an attack, he's always doing something productive. You can consider him like that, without the life regen. But he does have the remove negative effects, and he has other stuff too, like remove positive effects from enemies, apply burning, AoE immunity, freeze to everybody, pretty much in the same lines of that. The same concept. If you watch my Vadianoi video, kind of like the same concept. He's doing damage while he's also doing something else too. He's always doing something productive with his time. So his trait is hardened. So to be fair, you can put this on defense. It is the lowest defensive trait. Honestly, if any trait, if you put anything on defense without a full-on immunity to something, this is the thing you should have it with. If it's not a general, if it's not anything, it's not like a VIP or anything like that, this is the trait you should have if you're not running a full-on immunity, because you have a 20% chance not to get frozen, you have a 20% chance not to get stunned. This actually complements with his play style, because if he doesn't get frozen or stunned, he can remove the frozen, he can remove the stun, just straight up the bat, and you're now just fine. The enemy monster should have just not have a denier at that point if you can avoid being denied with this trait. Fire Whip. This deals heavy fire damage to all enemies, may burn all targets, may blind all targets, and may apply damage reduction to all targets. Excuse me. This is a very supporty move, and this can be a really, really powerful one if you set up right away. If you set up the weakness to fire, you can immediately combo with Fire Whip and spontaneously combust anything in the area. You'll do so much damage, they'll just faint. After doing 2 AoEs, that's usually the case anyway, but in this situation, it is very accurate that they'll all die. Even with the even if it's not like a 70 base AoE, if you have the fire weakness set up, they're going to take a lot of damage. There's no avoiding that. So this also gives the opportunity, even if they live through it, they're also going to do less damage, so that's nice, and they also have a chance to miss. They're basically being Egg Eater plus small damage reduction. So you could say it's a mix of Reptile's single target move and Reptile's single target move and Egg Eater's AoE. It's just got that additional damage reduction right there. It's just 2 and 2 together. Now, I don't believe there's anything in skill groups 1 worth talking about whatsoever. Things in skill groups 2 and 3. Cursed Flames. This deals very heavy special damage. Removes positive effects from all enemies. This requires a cooldown of 1 turn, 55 damage, 31 stamina. It's not spammable, it's a 1 turn cooldown. Now, I say you should run this move for a number of reasons. 1, it removes all positive effects, so this gets rid of Darmith's double damaged, half damage buff. It just cleans it up right away. It can get rid of, if Shalinar, if for an odd reason the Shalinar hasn't killed everybody on your team, if it just did double damage, and decided to do, let's say it's just decided to set up for, the fire thing, you can just immediately remove that double damage. If you just ignited everybody, if you're fighting an AI Shalinar and she just double damage and then just ignited everything and not do any damage that turn, you can save your life with this move. You can also take the time, you basically just take the time to do that and you'll be fine. This is a really helpful move in that regard. Now I'm trying to think of other fire monsters that have setup skills. If they ever put like a Radora on defense, you can get rid of that double damage or that burning, or that precision accuracy if they set that up. You can do that. There are some fire monsters that do take time to set up, so you could use this to your advantage. Mostly Darmith. You will use this mostly on Darmith. You'll probably fight Darmith with this thing most often. That's a highly accurate assumption. This move is Fire Target. Deals very heavy fire damage, may burn target, requires a cooldown of 1 turn, 31 stamina, and it does 60 damage. Now, I'm going to say for the most part, you don't have to run the skill. You just don't. You have the option to, you don't. This is probably one of his higher base damaging moves. If you do like the AoE fire weakness, you can also run the AoE burning. There's not much point to run this move other than the fact it does really high amount of damage. So if you're looking for really, really high end damage and you're not really looking for him removing negative effects for some odd reason, this is the move you put it on. If you don't like this move, put this move on. Enough said. They cost about the same. Yeah, they are the same. In fact, they cost the same. They even have the same cooldown. So if you're not interested in this, you could run this if you wanted. Personally, I would just run this over this. Because I already have something that can apply weakness to everything. That's already a thing. With Open Flesh right here, this is the move that applies the fire weakness to everybody. Ice Blocker. Ice Blocker. deals very heavy damage, fire damage specifically, and gives immunity to freeze to all allies. This is actually a spammable skill. So even if you get Timeron, let's say you do get Timeron for some reason, and you now have like no cooldowns. Even if like keep in mind too, this is actually anti-Timeron too. All these like most of these cooldowns are like up here specifically are just one turn cooldowns. You can spam this move. You can spam immunity to freeze, and you get it for 3 turns. you get immunity to freeze for 3 turns. So this can counter a variety of things in the water category. You can counter things in the category that's not water. You know, let's say Pixelian. Let's say you just fight Pixelian for some reason. You know, it would be an easy fight regardless, but you'll say you are fighting him, this move becomes relevant in that situation because Pixelian has no way to freeze you at this point. That's the main sell point for you on Pixelian, because he could AoE freeze anybody or just single target freeze somebody, and he's a magic monster, he's not a water monster. You could, this is a good counter move for that situation, or just any situation where it's just maybe random effects too. Maybe you get like random effect upon. You would have been frozen, but now you're not going to be frozen because you have this. This is on an AoE scaling. It's just to protect from freezers. This is a valid move. Now, you can build full speed on this thing to prevent things like frostbite, to prevent things like hydrotilla water form, to constantly freeze you all day. You can keep this from that. You can keep them from doing that with this move. That is fair game. Melting Sword. This deals very heavy damage and removes all negative effects from allies. This is a 65 damage skill, 1 turn cooldown, and hey, look at that, 31 stamina. It's like looking in a mirror from up here. So you don't you really don't even have to run the skill now, because this is a required skill anyway. This is this deals 31. You know, it has not 31 damage. This does 65 damage, 31 stamina, 1 turn cooldown. So basically, upgraded version, and you remove all debuffs from your allies. You should run the skill because this basically removes burning, and more importantly, it can remove sticky lava. A lot of people love playing Shalinar on defense. So if you have this skill, it can save you. Let's say they take the time to set up, that you can use this move to remove the setup, and you're fine. You're perfectly safe. You don't need to worry about it anymore. So yeah, that's a really good good defensive counter. It's good for removing setup. It's good for countering things like Egg Eaters, AoE, Blind, and Burn. It's good for that. It's just good to remove all negative effects. The bonus to this is not many like supports in the game usually do like a lot of damage. This thing does a lot of damage. I would say in terms of damage, this is probably one of the higher damaging supports in the game. And it just straight up the bat does 65 damage. This is naturally high damage. So if you're running a really, really good strength route on this thing, this is going to punch a hole in something. It just is. It's just going to punch a hole in something, and you're going to remove all your debuffs. Now, I'm going to say kind of a down thing is if you do get possessed, that's not going to help you. You're not going to be able to remove possession. You know, that's not going to do you any good. But let's say you don't get possessed. Let's say TuelKahju doesn't get possessed. Let's say, again, this is going back to, let's say he doesn't get frozen. He can remove. You can just straight up remove it. This is kind of like just a safety move. If he doesn't get stunned, if he doesn't get frozen, if he doesn't get possessed, he can remove that from his allies. You know, he can remove being frozen. He can remove being stunned from his allies at that point. So that's really nice. That's going for him. He does a lot of damage. Again, he's a support that can do damage. And it's interesting enough that not many people are fond of him. I think he's great. I think he's all right. Again, I thought all the battle mages in the last maze were fantastic. No, they just were. There was nothing to really argue about them, except for a small thing. Only small things, but that's it. They're all fantastic monsters in my opinion. Skin Burner deals moderate fire damage to all enemies, may burn targets. This is a 45 damage AoE, 28 damage, 3 turn cooldown. Now this cooldown is really high. At least you have the fact that you're always going to be running really low cooldown single target moves to make up for that. And usually, for the most part, once you've done this, you're good. Once you've set up this, once you've set up the AoE with open flesh, you can just use Skin Burner and then burn everything. You have that option too. So this is basically your mandatory AoE DOT. It's good against things that don't have the burn immunity. A lot of people love running things like Dartmouth, Greedy, and Shalinar on defense. So this is a valid move. And honestly, between all the DOT like elemental things like bleeding, poison, what have you, or like if it's like a specific if it relates to a specific element. Nature generally immune to poison, so that it does actually help in that regard because a lot of monsters that are put on defense are immune to poison. But for a lot of things that are fire-based, not all of them are always immune to burn. Everybody loves putting Darmouth on defense because he's a really good monster, but he's not immune to burn. A lot of people like putting Shalinar in defense, but she's not immune to burn. If anything, if you burn Shalinar, that's a health hazard. If you can burn her, and that burn does like special base damage, she's in trouble. She's going to take a lot of damage before she gets to do her thing, which could be beneficial for you. But AoE burning is your basic DOT. You use this to kill tanks. More importantly, you use this against a Ursus. Like I said, this was a Ursus counter. You might say Dib, though. They're all fire-based moves. That is a point there, but you're also forgetting that of this next move. If you don't know about it yet, Open Flesh here deals moderate fire damage to all enemies, gives fire weakness to all enemies. That's the whole point. In all honesty, that's the whole point of all these moves being fire-based moves, because this is your setup. You use this move at your setup. Now, it has been said in the chat, I don't know if they fixed this yet, but apparently this move is bugged at the moment. It only hits one. It's only affecting one enemy, the sticky lava, at the moment. Hopefully they fix that, but it is intended for an AoE scaling, as said by the words here. And that just complements. That pretty much fixed all the problems with his moves being fire-based. It now hits everybody. If anything, it hits for super effective damage. That's why he doesn't necessarily have to do damage, simply because the weakness enough is a lot of damage. You're taking 80% more damage, like over half. You're taking over half more damage at that point, and if they're not even running a life rune, they're gonna melt. That's just the situation they're in, and they have to deal with it. But obviously, if you build damage on it, you will for sure melt things. You just will. Especially if that strength rune is really, really good. So you could get away with running let's say you run like a 8 to 10 strength rune on it, and then 2 speeds. You'll still do a lot of damage. Or like you could do the extra guy build. In all honesty, this guy could get away without having to build 2 strength runes if you wanted to. You can build 2 speeds and a strength. It'll help you set up faster too. I will say if you can double turn somebody with that amount of speed, you get not only do you get a setup right away, but you also get to do a shit ton of damage to anyone that messes with you. Or like you can immediately pick somebody out right away if you wanted to. But obviously the more damage, obviously the more strength runes you have, just straight up you'll be able to one hit anything regardless, not having to set up. So you can run that argument too. But this is a for sure move you need to run. You run the skill, it gets rid of tanks, it gets rid of pretty much anything. This is why I really like weakeners in the game, because they do so much damage and they can just melt tanks. They just do that. If it can apply an elemental weakness, it's preferably speaking, it is a really great monster to have. But yeah, that's just the thing in my book. So what moves do you run on this? Personally, I'd run Open Flash, I'd run Skin Burner, I'd run Melting Sword. I'm now just realizing. That doesn't look pretty. Yeah, I think it has got 4 move syndrome. When you realize at the very end it has 4 move syndrome. This is a must move to have regardless. You have to have this for your against your fire opponents. So I guess you could say it's a coin toss between Cursed Sword and Cursed Flames and Melting Sword here. For sure, you have to have this move. There's no reason not to have Ice Blocker, because it gives you immunity to freeze. That's fantastic. Is that situational true? Or maybe you don't. Maybe, okay, so here's... Because you should always have the AoE too, because that's nice. That combos well with the Skin Opener. Maybe you don't have to run the AoE if you don't want to. Maybe you don't. You could use this guy as your secondary attacker and clean up anything that you haven't cleaned up yet. You could do that. Yeah, you should always have an AoE with an attacker. So Open Flash, Skin Burner, your choice between Cursed Flames and or Melting Sword, and you should be running Ice Blocker just because of the utility. I'm going to say if you run things that already give immunity to freeze, there's no point in having this move. So to be fair, you could run both Cursed Flames and Melting Sword at that point. If you're not planning on running him, I would say if you're not planning on running him as a support, there's no point in this move. Or like, well, there is a point, but you know, you get more universal utility out of this, if you know what I mean. This pretty much counters Dartmouth fully per 100%. It also counters up anything that's set up double damage and hasn't killed you yet. And this just cleans up all the like burning damage you would get, or like if you were to be burned, if you were to get poisoned, this cleans up everything. This is a fantastic cleaning move. So in terms of a for sure set at the moment, I'd have you run Open Flash. It's your weakener. I'd have you run Skin Burner. It's your AOE DOT. I'd have you run either Cursed Flames and or Melting Sword. That's your choice. You decide which one you want at that point. An Ice Blocker simply because it gives you immunity to freeze. There's no point in running Fire Target because this burns. This is an AoE burn. You don't need it. You don't need the Fire Target move, and these do plenty enough damage, especially if you go with Melting Sword. That's more than enough. But yeah, that's just it at this point. Will you miss out on damage if you go for Cursed Flames? Yes, but you have a tactical advantage due to the fact you can remove double damage from Dartmouth or like the Berserker, you know, buff. You can remove that too. It's just utility. That's all it is. Partners, real quick, you can generally pair this up with anything. Fire monsters specifically, and or monsters that can do fire moves, especially Roxanne. The metal monster Roxanne works wonders with this thing, I can imagine, simply because he does fire damage himself, and he's single target move. He has a single target move that does 70 to 75 damage, I think, and a 30 damage, you know, fire AoE. So you can complement with the weakening stuff. That's just nice. It's lovely. But yeah, I do believe that's it for the most part. Maroons, real quick, you can build 2 strengths and a speed. This is your attacker build, so you don't necessarily need to run ice. You don't have to run Ice Blocker. You can choose to run both Cursed Flames and Melting Swords for your just optimal damage. But if you wanted a spammable damage, you could say you could run all the single target moves if you wanted to. You know, just if you wanted to be anti cooldowns activated, you could say this is an anti-cooldowns activated build. Open Flash, Melting Sword, Ice Blocker, and Cursed Flames. If you get cooldowns activated, you can follow suit with Icebreaker, and then Cursed Flames or Melting Sword, you know. But overall, that's everything about him. I think he's an alright monster. I'm currently trying to get him at the moment. I'm going to be excited if I can use them in the future. Yep. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Dib the Awesome. Let me know if you have any more questions about this monster, and I'll catch you guys later.